Well, hello everybody, and thank you for making it in the middle of a cold week. Um, and we're very fortunate that we have this wonderful team uh, between our special pops team, the very proactive Georgette who conceived of this idea, which is a great idea, and of the seminar working with the press, and which actually is part, as we see it, of the scientific uh, uh, trajectory, if you were, of the entire CTSA, because there's multiple pathways. CTSA is all about translation, and translation happens in many ways. And part of the translation is through what the public understands. And policymakers read the press also, so it's a very important way that research results get translated into use, as well as people understanding what it is that's available to them. So for all those reasons, this is actually a very important, scientifically important component of what the CTSA does. So it's my pleasure. I'm Stephen Crystal. I'm the lead of the Special Pops Corps, and it's my pleasure to present Megan Schumann, Senior Public Relations Specialist. Megan handles the media relations for the social sciences at Rutgers, New Brunswick, and Patti Verbanas, who is R-Comm Assistant Director of Public and Media Relations for Health Affairs at Rutgers Biomedical and Health Sciences. Patti has been doing media relations for RBHS since it was UMDNJ. And that's a little while now. We've all lived through this transition. R-Comm, the team that Megan and Patti sit on, is the Central Marketing and Communications Department serving both Rutgers, New Brunswick and RBHS communities. Thank you both for being here, and we look forward to this media training seminar. So
Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. I'm Megan Schumann, part of the R-Comm team. I handled specifically the social sciences at Rutgers, New Brunswick, so dealing with various schools that kind of fall into that category, whether it's social work, the business school, bunch of different departments out of SAS. I've been here at Rutgers for over 3 years now, but have been in public relations for over 10. So have been working with the media throughout my career in that regard. Patti, I don't know if you just want to give a little intro on your end before I start sharing my screen.
Go for it, Megan.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump right in. For those of you who are not aware of R-Comm and sort of the resources that we provide, our team has been around for about 5 or 6 years or so. We've been working very closely with our faculty, certain centers, to really make sure that we're all aligned when it comes to working with the media. Just going through our slides. So we have, just on the specifically of the media relations team, there's a bunch of different avenues that we sort of take when we're wanting to promote expertise, a research paper, maybe a really cool project that you guys are a part of. Maybe there's even just an interesting student story that you're aware of. So we do these in a few different directions, but for the purposes of the media relations team, we specifically are working with the news media to kind of spread the word, which is really great. But just so you know, on the R-Comm side of things, we also have a marketing team, a digital team, a social media team, and a creative team. And so sort of all of us kind of work together in that realm. But Patti and I specifically handle media relations. So that can mean, proactively pitching our news media contacts with maybe your expertise or a research project. We also get, and Patti, over the last 2 years has been inundated with media inquiries. So inquiries that come into us asking about certain expertise in regards to, the pandemic or whatever might be happening sort of in the current news cycle at that time. So we're consistently dealing with that. Our team also handled, at least on the New Brunswick and RBHS, we also handle some of the crisis issues or management issues. So always happy to help lean into those whenever needed. And then just so you know, there's a number of different resources that we use to be able to succeed and get our job done. You know, the big thing I think to remember is that our team is really a resource for you guys. We're always here. You know, just this morning, Patti was on a call with a faculty member who is about to be on Bloomberg. She sort of did a one-on-one media training with them just before this. So, you know, this could be like our broader overview of what working with the media looks like, how you should do it successfully. But just know that if ever, you know, somebody calls you and you're not quite sure what to do, you can always come to us. We're always happy to jump on the phone and talk about best practices or, you know, talking points and things like that. So this isn't sort of like a one and done type thing. You can always feel free to contact us. But we use a couple of different resources, which has been really great to sort of disseminate, aside from sort of our relationship building over, you know, our decades long careers with the news media. We also have a media monitoring database. We have Eureka Alert, which is the AAAS online science news service, which sort of releases our press releases out into the wild. We also use Newswise, which has been really amazing to help with things that are happening in the current news cycle as they happen that day. And then we also sort of tag team with our marketing and social media colleagues as well. You know, the pandemic has sort of provided this amazing opportunity for, you know, aside from all the things that have happened, it's been less so, you know, in terms of television media and things like that. They've been more willing to do Zoom interviews. So we've had to use the ITV studio a little less, which has been great. But certainly, as you know, things start to get back to normal, that might be just something that we can plug in and play for you. But I feel like the news media has been very receptive to doing a lot of our interviews, whether that's for TV or broadcast via Zoom, which has been really great. The other thing I just want to note is that our team works very closely with the University Communications and Marketing team, which is headed up by, which, you know, incorporates Rutgers Today. So you can be sure that we're consistently talking with our partners over at Rutgers Today. A lot of the content or press releases or stories that we put out are also filtered through Rutgers Today. So we kind of have this great working relationship in terms of making sure that we are also working with that UCM team as well. Just in terms of why you might consider why you might talk to the media. You'll just see here a couple of interviews that have recently happened with Ashley Koenig, who is a part of the Eagleton Institute of Politics, and David Dreyfus, who's at the business school. He was talking about supply chain. In terms of why talking to the media is important, one of the major things that we really want to push is that it gives Rutgers and your work sort of this third-party credibility. You know, when a reputable news source like the New York Times or the BBC is including your expertise and your comments, or is even, you know, dedicating a whole feature story to the work that you're doing, that really provides a very different impact than if it were for us to be writing a story on it. You know, different impact in terms of different audiences, which is great. Not to say one is better than the other, but it really gives us sort of like a holistic view in terms of reaching various audiences. So, you know, the other thing is obviously sharing with the world what you learned when you're doing this research or you know, throughout your careers. You know, we really try and strive that getting the work out about the things that you guys are doing on the ground is really important to be sharing with everybody. So we sort of take that as a personal responsibility to be able to clearly and definitively get it out into the world through the news media. And then the other thing I just want to highlight is we have seen a lot of different funding opportunities or project opportunities that have come from media exposure for past projects. So these could be, you could be sharing links or interview stories with potential funders or stakeholders that are important to your projects. So that just might give you a sort of leg up when you're considering various other projects. So as I mentioned, we do media training one-on-one, ad hoc, various times. Other things that we also do is, if it's an email interview, Patti and I are happy to look over answers, maybe make some edits, suggestions, recommendations, and certain things like that. So you can always feel like you have some support there and you're not kind of on your own when you're just sending responses back to a reporter. Any questions so far? We'll definitely answer some questions later on, but I just want to take a pause for a sec. Okay, so Patti and I work very closely with all of our faculties across RBHS in New Brunswick. Just a couple of examples, we really try as the media relations team to leverage all sorts of opportunities. So we're not just thinking about, news coverage and links to be sharing. We're also thinking about how certain content could be used on Rutgers Today, on our website, via social media, and other sort of different audiences. So, which is why we always want to hear about interesting stuff happening within your units, because there's might be other opportunities that we could sort of put forth aside from pitching or working with the news media. So I just want to give a couple just recent examples. I worked with Felix, who is a part of the School of Social Work. He had a study come out in December, and we proactively, did proactive outreach to the media and was able to secure an interview with him on WNYC. These other two opportunities with Lena and Diana Sanchez, these were reactive inquiries that came up in from media contacts that we were able to place these two experts in these various stories. So one sort of highlighting the amazing research that's going on at our school, but also taking advantage of the expertise that Diana and Lena have to contribute to these two news stories as part of Star Ledger and Vox. So, I mentioned a little bit on the shared side, we work very closely with our social media team. We also work very closely with the Star Ledger on certain op-ed topic ideas. I think in the past it's ranged from marijuana legalization to the pandemic to certain aspects of engineering that have taken over the state. So it sort of depends, and certainly we're always happy to have certain ideas come our way that we could either pitch to the Star Ledger or brainstorm with you guys and really figure out how best we want to get the idea out.
Patti, Megan, can I ask you a question? It's Georgia. Yeah. What's the best way for people to approach you? And they're doing their research, they think and you want to get the word out about what you're doing. How do they go about that?
You are happy to, we work very closely with, if you have a school communicator, you can definitely feel free to reach out to them and they'll likely pass on the information. You could reach out to the school communicator and Patti and myself, depending on what area you're in. It definitely varies, Georgette, in terms of how we work with folks, depending on their comfortability or their time and energy. Excuse me. Sometimes I hear from communicators saying, hey, I heard at the water cooler that so-and-so researcher is working on a really cool study. Can I pass it along to you? Sometimes a researcher will reach out to me directly, just saying, letting you know I have a research project that's going to be publishing in a month. Can you take a look at it and let me know if you think it might warrant a press release? And I would say just to that end, Georgette, like the biggest thing I think for Patti and I is, giving enough leeway for us to write a potential press release. And I'm going to be honest, there is some research that either might be too niche for the general news media or is maybe more for practitioners than the media. So we kind of try and decide what's going to get sort of the most exposure. So as long as everybody's okay with that, and sort of we can make that decision together. But I would say you can always flag it for us, whether that's just sending us an email or a note. Um,
And Megan,
I usually ask.
I'm sorry, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Because I see that Nicole, the communicator for IFH, is on this call.
Right.
Megan works with Rutgers, New Brunswick. I work with RBHS. Usually what I like on my end for RBHS people, I'd like you to, work through your institute communicator, let them know, and then they can triage to me, because sometimes the communicator will write these press releases, and we will work with them to promote it and get it up so we can tag team in that way. So I think in the case of IFH, the way I've always worked, Megan may work differently for RBHS people, is to alert Nicole, go through Nicole, and Nicole knows that we are a value added, that we can help write press releases, do what needs to be done. Again, if they are a release that would be something that would be of interest to the general public and something that can easily be communicated to the general public.
Thanks, Patty. Yeah, that sounds great. And I would say same thing, not just for research, but let's say something's happening in the news media that morning, and a light kind of goes off, and so you kind of think to yourself, hey, I know I can speak to what's happening that day, or what's going to be happening in a couple of days, just in regards to, maybe mental health and the pandemic, or what's going on in the news cycle these days. Just like in inflation, I've been working with a lot of our economics professors. Feel free to also just flag that for Nicole too, because there might be just proactive opportunities that we can take advantage of when it comes to thinking about the news cycle. So any questions in regards to like research and things like that, you can always flag them for Nicole, and we'll work very closely with her. Usually I like to know about research once it's accepted, so that it will give me some time to write a release, though certainly there's things, really important work that gets flagged for me a little closer to publication, and we will turn it around quickly as well and try and time it to that publication date as closely as we can. When it comes to research, we really like to try and send it under embargo if that's a possibility, just because a lot of the major news organizations don't want to hear about it secondhand. So we really try to give them a little bit more lead time. And then just so I'm not sure if everybody gets the current, but it is the faculty and staff internal newsletter, which oftentimes will mention maybe certain research or faculty promotions, faculty awards. So if there's things like that that might be coming up, maybe you've gotten an award, I would also flag that for Nicole as well, so that she can submit it to the current. Okay. So, what happens if you are contacted by the media? I would say the number one thing just to note, if let's say maybe it's a sensitive issue, maybe you're being asked about something that you're not comfortable with asking, feel free to flag it for Nicole and our team so that we can kind of help triage and figure out, should we respond? How should we respond? Patty, Nicole, or I could be sort of the bad guy in terms of responding on your behalf. So just know that if a sensitive issue or a sensitive crisis does come up, there is support here in terms of making sure that we can figure out how best to navigate that. The big thing is, letting just maybe Nicole or our team know if you have been contacted by a reporter. The biggest thing for journalists and news media is timeliness. A lot of the times these folks are working on a very hard deadline. So I would say, in order to establish a really great working relationship with a reporter, just getting back in a timely manner, whether that's I can do the interview, I can't do the interview. You could also, let's say you're about to hop on a plane and you can't do the interview, you can always flag it for Nicole and our team, and say, hey, maybe somebody else at Rutgers could answer this. We can also figure out maybe if somebody at IFH could also answer whatever specific inquiry it is. And so we really try and figure out all of our faculty's really expertise so that we can minimize the time it takes to sort of find somebody that might be appropriate or available to answer a media call for us. So just looking through these top level points, we can help you also decide whether it's worthwhile, whether it's sensitive. I get a lot of emails from faculty just forwarding, if a reporter reaches out to them directly, just forwarding along, saying, hey, can you look at this inquiry? I've never heard of Vice, or I've never heard of Vox. Are they reputable? What should I expect? Do the questions look appropriate? Can you just weigh in on that? And I'm always happy to either say, yeah, this looks good, or I've worked with this reporter before. Vox's audience really leans more towards millennial, and really provide that big picture for you so that you can make the decision to move forward or politely decline, on your behalf. I'm also happy to politely decline on your behalf as well if we decide for whatever reason not to move forward with an interview. And I think, Patty, anything from this slide before I tack it on to you? I really think just trying to build. I have a faculty member, just as an example, who I've been working with for about a year and a half. She is a very huge expert, a leading expert in NFT and blockchain. She was not when we first started working together, but she has proven to a lot of media that she can be responsive, that she can speak in sort of a layperson's term to really explain NFT, which I'm sure all of you know is a sort of complicated topic, and unlike some of your other ones. And so I would say that's really been such a big asset for her. The other day we got a media interview in Forbes, and it was the second one done because the first one she was fairly responsive and just a great asset to have for that article. So just keeping those sorts of things in mind. We understand that you guys are extremely busy. We want to make sure that we're taking care of your time management and working with you in that way. We also know that not everybody can respond at every given moment because you're in class or you're working with students. So we can help manage those situations for you so that, trying to find the pockets of time that you are available to do media. Thanks, guys. I'm going to pop it over to Patty.
Okay. And Megan, you'll be turning slides for me? Thank you. Just 2 points on what Megan had mentioned before. One of the things that's really helpful and what you might want to do is set a Google alert for your name, especially if you're speaking in the media, because that way you'll always see what's popping up. And people like to hold on to that to show funders. Also, it's just good to know. But let's say you see something pop up in the media, they're like, oof, that's not right. They misquoted me. You can always circle back to either Megan or myself, and we can triage that and contact the media person and see if the item can be corrected, which, I really haven't had any experience where it hasn't been, because reporters want to get it right. And sometimes it's an editor that changes things. So that's something else we can do. We protect your reputation in the media. We're very conscious of that. Like Megan said, as we are of your time. So Googling your name is good. I don't know about Megan, but whenever I work with media once a week, I send the faculty member any kind of media hits that we get resulting from our collective effort. So you will see those, but sometimes when things are syndicated, it just goes completely haywire and you're all over the world. So it's good to see those. Another point about the work that you do with us is when we put you out to the media, it's not a one and done thing. So what you'll find is we put out either an expert advisory where you're talking about something that's going on in the news cycle right now, just a really quick takeaway quote. You may not even get an interview. They might just pick up your quote, which is great because we control the message. Your quote is in place, your title is correct, and it goes out. Now, 6 weeks, 6 months, a year later, we may get a phone call that says, hey, we know so-and-so talks about this particular topic. We would like to talk to them. And that happens. And as you see yourself, being put out into the media, all of a sudden media start understanding that you are a go-to source, which can be a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because then you could get inundated. But that's where we come in, because we are the buffer in between you and them. We are the we're the ones who they contact, and we will help triage, like Megan said. So, again, it can get a little bit crazy if the topic is something that is in the news. And we do work with you to manage that. But just know that when we put something out into the media, it still is there, and it may come back, and you might be getting more phone calls, later on. So that's one of the beauties of working with the media, because it does enhance your reputation, and by extension, the reputation of Rutgers. Okay, next slide.
One sec.
I know I have these issues too.
Okie doke.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the nitty gritty of talking to the media. Now, this is going to be whether you're serving as an expert or whether you are doing, promotion on a study. So you want to come up with talking or message points, which are usually like 2 or 3 talking points that are going to convey in very basic general terms the key messages that you want the reporter and the audience to take away. I tell faculty members to write these points down or print them out on a computer with little bullet points, and like, these are the things that I want to definitely have. Put them on the side so that when you're doing the interview, you can always look over and you can see that, this is a point that I definitely want to make sure I make, because sometimes you get into the conversation and you might forget, or the reporter is taking you down a tangent. This will allow you to be able to bring the reporter back to your main points. The next thing is prepare a soundbite that summarizes your main message. And this is especially key when you're dealing with radio. I have faculty members that say, this radio station talked to me for 20 minutes and they used 1 sentence. Well, that's the way it is, because it's just, they pull out these sound bites. So you want to put something together that is really compelling, just a really great quote that really conveys your main message. And that way, you're kind of hooking them. You're guaranteeing that is got a fighting shot to be what's being used in the piece. You want to speak very plainly and concisely. I always tell faculty members, pretend you're talking over the fence to your neighbor about your work. How would you explain it to them? That is really a good way, because you're explaining to a lay audience. They're not, they're intelligent people, but they don't know the science like you do. I had a reporter give me a very good tip once and said, whenever a faculty member can speak in metaphors or give examples or anecdotes, that's always helpful. Even if you're saying, it is like this, put it in ways that people can understand. Under the same terms, you want to use real terms. You don't want to use medical jargon because that's something that would alienate the audience. You just want to speak very, very plainly. A good practice is taking your talking points and saying them out loud, because the more you say it out loud, the more it solidifies in your mind, and it rapidly will just roll off your tongue when you're talking to reporters. Here it says practice with your smartphone to get accustomed to how your voice sounds on video and audio. And this is actually a little bit of an awkward practice, but when you get used to it, because everybody just hates the way they sound on tape, right? But you'll be able to hear how you speak. Are you speaking fast? Most people speak fast, especially, I'm probably speaking fast now. People speak fast when they're in conversation, especially when they're a little bit nervous and they're, talking to a reporter, and that'll make people a little bit nervous. So when you're talking, you want to sort of slow down and really just take your time. When you're talking to print, that's less important, but when you're talking to TV, you're talking to radio, that is a good practice to help develop. When the interview involves your research findings, there's only 3 key questions that you really have to have on mind, and this could be your talking points. What did you study? What are your major findings? And why does it matter? Why does it matter to your audience? Why does it matter to the reporter? You want to sort of bring it on home, and that's something that would hook people in as well for future interviews. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now we're getting to the interview. So the big point is you want to listen carefully and sound conversational, but remember, the interview is not a conversation. So you want to be friendly, you want to be personable. but you have to remember that this is something that you don't want to say anything that you don't want broadcast on the front page of the New York Times. So the biggest point I want you to take home is that the mic is always live. And the mic is, even if you're talking to a digital reporter who is going to be just putting things in print, anything you say when you start a conversation with a reporter can be quoted. So be careful with what you say, even conversational or small talk, you need to be very careful. One of the things I do tell faculty members is just never go off the record. Because even the most diligent and professional reporter, notes can get scrambled, or notes can be passed to another reporter who might be sharing a story, and something that you didn't want to have in the story gets in the story. On a rare occasion, I have put faculty members with reporters on background interviews. And what background interviews are is the reporter just wants to know more about a particular topic. Our researcher will not be quoted. They know that from the get-go, so anything that they're talking about will not be quoted at all. So, and usually in those cases, I tend to sit in on those interviews as I would with anything that's a little bit more sensitive, or if there's an investigative reporter, I'll sit in just to make sure that, the faculty member is protected and they don't answer questions that they shouldn't. So when a reporter contacts you, they may have an idea of their story, but you can't ask them what's their angle. But you can ask them, can you tell me more about the story that you're working on? Because that'll give you an idea of where they're coming from. And that's a good question to ask before you even commit to the article or the piece, so you sort of know. A lot of times it's something straightforward, especially if it's about your study, but it's a good thing to ask. It's also good to ask their questions. They may not give them, or they may say, this is sort of my general idea, but our conversation could go elsewhere. And that's completely understandable, because sometimes an answer that you give makes them think of something. They're like, oh, that's interesting. Let's go down that path. Now, let's say you're going down a path that gets very tangential to what you're talking about. A good phrase to use, and this is something else along with your talking points you can put down on a piece of paper, is, I think the most important point is. So if somebody asks you a question and it's just going down a path that you just don't want to go down, or it's something that you're just not, it's just not important, just say, that's an interesting point, but I think what the most important point is, and bring it back. Sometimes they'll take the bait on that. Sometimes they won't. If there is a question that comes at you that you don't know the answer to, just be very honest and say, that's not in my area of research. That's another thing you can put down on your piece of paper to have that catchphrase right there. That's not in my area of research. If it's something that you can reasonably research beyond, you say that's not in my area of expertise. However, if you want, I can find out and send you an email. So that's
Patty, it's interesting how similar these guidelines are to guidelines for expert witnesses when you're in court. I don't know if you ever thought about that.
Funny. Yeah.
Very similar kinds of things you have to remember.
Yeah, and that's a good way to think about it. You are on the stand, right?
Yeah.
Your reputation is on
Exactly.
trial.
It's all going into the record or the deposition.
Exactly.
And people are trying to trick you into overextending yourself or saying something that they then
and it's not just
your credibility.
Yeah, and sometimes they're just asking questions because they see you as an expert and expect you to know this stuff.
But they want you to say something controversial, and that's where you have to be careful.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they'll bait you. And we get this next point quite a bit on the medical side. We'll have reporters. They have a medical expert, and they ask them to speculate or address a hypothetical situation. If that's the case and it's outside of your area of expertise, don't speculate on things. If there is somebody else who might be able to comment, you just direct them back to us, and Megan and I will work in the same way and vet that for that person. So don't feel compelled to answer a question that you're not able to answer.
And just another, sometimes reporters will just, kind of sit in silence, waiting for you to fill it. If you've answered the question, just kind of say it, and that's what I think, or whatever it is to say. Okay, I'm not going to kind of keep talking or keep rambling, because there's no need. They might
Yeah.
just want you to fill the silence and say
Yeah.
something that they might believe.
And that usually happens a lot with investigative type of questions. Not so much in the case of studies, because to be honest with you, reporters have a deadline. They want to get on and off the phone with you as fast as possible and move on to their next thing. But with investigative type of pieces, yeah, you will get that. And this is a little trick that if you're not on camera, I always tell my experts to do. After you're done talking, if you feel like the interview is kind of that way where they have a lot of these pregnant pauses afterward where they want you to fill the silence, just mash your lips together. Push your lips together. You're not talking, you're done. Zip it, lock it, it's done. And that is, it's another little, physical thing that you can do to keep yourself from talking, because that's just human nature to fill that void. Now, unless you're on TV, you don't need to speak perfectly. Even with radio, they're going to edit you down. Again, they're going to edit you down to sound bites. So you can be very, comfortable. We always tell people not to try to work on their uhs and ums, which is good practice for when you're on TV, especially live TV. But otherwise, just know that will get edited out. You don't ask to see a reporter's story before it runs. However, if you're talking about complicated science, or if you feel that the reporter just is not getting what you're talking about, it is completely fine to offer to fact check the notes. And sometimes reporters will do it, sometimes they won't. I'm going to tell you a little story that happened over with the School of Public Health on a very controversial type of article that the New York Times was working on. And I was sitting in on this interview. And, we were just worried. We didn't think that the reporter wasn't getting it. The science was not complicated. However, it was an investigative type piece, and we were just worried that they would get something wrong. And again, this is the New York Times. And I had the faculty member ask, hey, I know we talked about a lot of things, but I would be happy to fact check any of your notes just to make sure you got it correct. And wouldn't you know it, that reporter said, I would appreciate that. And he sent it to us almost immediately. We looked at it. There was one minor inaccuracy. We sent it back and all was good. So just know that you can absolutely ask that question. Next slide, please. All right, so here are some mistakes that people make. And I think we heard something. Somebody's phone was just going off, right? Megan, was that you doing an illustration? Okay. So one of the things you want to do, and this is even if you're talking to a print reporter, because you just want to be respectful of their time as you want them to be respectful of yours. Turn off your phone if you have an extra phone. Go into a quiet location if possible. We mentioned before, never lie or mislead a reporter. You want to keep your credibility. I don't think that any of the people on this call would lie or mislead. But again, if you're speculating, that's kind of in that realm. So, just stick with your expertise and you'll be fine. We mentioned never going off the record. And the fact that the mic, the camera, and the phone is always hot. They can quote anything that you say. Remember, journalists aren't your enemy, but they're not your friends. You don't want to let your guard down too much. However, for the most part, the reporters are going to be contacting you for your studies. They just want to know what you did. And so there's not going to be any tricks or hijinks. There may be mistakes on the back end, but that's where we are to help, clean that up. But for the most part, they want to get it right.
I would say the biggest takeaway is obviously everybody here has the capability of doing media relations. Certainly it takes some practice, but I would say 98% of the media inquiries that we get are positive. These journalists are coming to us to source experts like you to help with their stories. And on the flip side, they also want to spread the word about the wonderful work that's happening here at the university. So I would say less so, crisis or issues management, and more so, they're looking to you for your expertise and to help sort of spread the word about your work. So definitely don't put your guard down, but know that that there are some really amazing opportunities here for our faculty to spread the word about their work.
And it's impressive how many of them also really care about the issues.
They do.
So
Yeah.
if they, because they're not making tons of money in most cases these days in journalism. They want to be involved in public affairs. They care about it. Most of them do. And when you get to the developing relationship on that level, on the issues that they care about, it's a very good way to develop a continuing relationship.
That's right. Yeah, and most of the people who are contacting us are, they're science writers. So, they're not doing these investigative pieces, but that's where Megan and I step in. We can sniff these types of things out, and then we can help triage and see even if it's an interview that you want to do. Along those lines too, you never say no comment. It sounds like you're hiding something. I can't imagine that there's anything that we would be doing where we'd say no comment, but I think that kind of falls into, if you don't know an answer, don't answer it. If a reporter is unprofessional, you can always end the conversation. You can always leave the conversation. This is another thing you can put down on your piece of paper next to you when you're doing a interview. I'm not comfortable talking to you about this issue any longer. Or you could just say, I have a class to teach. Thank you very much. Whatever your excuse is, you can go there. A little side note, most of the people who we work with reporters, we have a number of reporters who we work with on a regular basis. They're very, very respectful of people's times. However, there are on occasion some people who are maybe not as professional as you would like them to be. And not in a malicious way, but we had a situation a couple months ago where one of our registered dietitians got on the phone to answer a question, and what should have been only maybe a 10-15 minute interview, which is what most of them are, it ended up being 40 minutes. And it ended up going into the reporter asking personal nutrition questions. And our faculty member just didn't get off the phone. You can get off the phone. Once the interview is done, or if the interview is going into a direction you don't want, just say, I'm sorry, I have an associate calling. As easy as that. I got to go. If you have any additional questions, feel free to email me. And that's kind of a good way to shut the door without truly shutting the door. So be respectful of your time, as well. And also, if you make a misstatement, you can always correct it before the interview ends. Or you could follow up with an email saying, hey, I don't think I was clear on this point, or I think I misstated this. Again, the reporter wants to get it correct. If a story runs with an error, you can contact Megan or I, and we can circle back to the reporter and get that corrected. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're gonna go down television, but just know the way I like to work it, I'm sure Megan does as well. If we're working with you on a particular piece, a Q&A, an advisory study, and you get a television request, and you are not well versed in television, we have some faculty members who have done it so much that it doesn't even faze them. I like to go and do a media training for television right when something is booked, so we can refresh all of this. But one of the things you want to do, and like Megan said, most of this is done via Zoom now. You want to use a little makeup to take the shine off your face. Put your Zoom camera on, just to see how you look. Clothing, mostly solid colors, not white, black stripes or plaids. It tends to jump. Megan, I don't know if that's really so much of an issue on Zoom, though. I mean, solid colors are still a safe bet, but I think that's more, when you're on TV.
Yeah, because I think they're, you might be thinking about a green screen or something like that.
Yeah.
If anybody ever asks questions, happy to, advise or make sure that something looks good, just even via FaceTime or something like that.
Right. So you want to find a comfortable position, and you just don't fidget. Now, Megan, you are on the screen. Show what I showed earlier about the one faculty member that had a wonderful interview, but then just kept doing this, talking with their hands. But you see how it's kind of like cropped down? It's very distracting. The other thing is that when you're doing a interview, and Megan, you're gonna model this as well. When you're doing an interview, you want to look at the camera, not at the screen. So Megan, look at the camera. Now look at the screen. Do you see the difference? Okay, so that's what you want to do. You want to remember to look at the little flashing light, or the little green light. So that way you're always looking correctly. As far as lighting, that's sort of the biggest issue with Zoom interviews because natural light is best. So you always want to try to find a place with natural light. Barring that, you just want to make sure that your lighting, you're not too dark. If you're wearing glasses, that there's not a glare on your glasses. These are the types of things that Megan and I or someone in our department, if we're not available, can help you troubleshoot. We will get on Zoom. I have a faculty member actually right now at New Jersey Medical School going live on Bloomberg on Omicron. And she and I just did a real quick and dirty with her Zoom this morning at 9 o'clock, just to make sure that her glasses looked okay, that the room that she was in, which had no natural light, would work. We played around with the light on the side. We realized that if she had the light on, her face for some inexplicable reason looked red. That has never happened before. I'm like, why is this red? So there's certain tricks that you can do, like positioning a light, to the side of you. One of my colleagues, one of her tricks is to take to take a smartphone flashlight, put it on the table in front of you and sort of shoot up. It kind of can illuminate your face. In the case of that, usually works. In the case of my expert today, it really didn't help any, so we're not going to do that. But it ended up with her, her room seemed to be good enough. Her face wasn't in shadows, and even though it was just a fluorescent bulb, we were able to make it work so that she would look good. I don't know if we have any clinicians here in the group, but if you have a white coat, wear your white coat, especially if you're talking about a study. Reporters love it, audiences love it. Do you have a Rutgers pin? If you have a Rutgers pin or can find a Rutgers pin, it's always great to wear a Rutgers pin because, sometimes the identifiers at the bottom don't do as good of a job, but at least you have your Rutgers pin. So when you're, if you're doing, if you're doing an interview, you want to get right to the point. And this is where your talking points come in. It's like with radio, you want to really have your soundbite because like radio, they are going to cut you down to the bare minimum. I had a faculty member on Sunday do, I got a phone call from ABC Nightly News and said, hey, do you have an expert who can comment on carbon monoxide poisoning because of the incident that happened in Ohio? He was ready. He pulled it together within an hour. He did a whole interview with ABC Nightly News. We got very excited. We watched it on Sunday night, and he had 2 sentences. So, and those 2 sentences were very important, but those were the 2 sentences that he prepared to make sure that that was the point that he wanted to get across. So don't be surprised if you talk for a long time and then end up with very little, but if the very little packs a punch, then that's great. You want it to be that key message point.
Do you have any comment on backgrounds?
Yes, we were going to comment on
Some
that.
people are using the digital backgrounds. Some people are using. You might comment on that also, maybe on
Yes.
any other technical issues like
Yeah.
webcam quality.
Yes, well, I don't know. Megan maybe can comment on the webcam quality. I can comment on the backgrounds and basically just don't do it. They never really look great. You end up with sometimes half a head. You jump around, on the screen. It's very distracting. If you're in an area that you really just don't want your background shown and there's no other place to go, blurring your background is a better bet.
Mm-hmm.
It's a crisper image, it's softer, it's muted. Those other backgrounds, it's very distracting. It's kind of like the hands.
Sometimes you're in, a floating head. Yeah, I usually just behind a bookcase or a blank wall or, whatever is easiest.
Yeah, and then just, clean your space. So wherever you are, you want to make sure, well, first of all, you want to scrub your space to make sure there's nothing like phone numbers. If you're a clinician, there's nothing that would violate HIPAA. Again, don't have anything behind you that you don't want the world to see. Like Megan has that clean background, that's fine. A bookcase, that's fine. Really, everyone's doing these via Zoom, so you see what people have, and some people have better backgrounds than others. So, really the lighting is very important, and then just make sure there's nothing sensitive in the screen that you don't want to have shown. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, I just want to be cautious of time. think this is our last slide, Patty, and then I
Yes, and
think we'll
we
have
can
a
do
couple minutes of questions.
Q&A. Yeah, well, this is just a recap of what we talked about, about preparing your talking points, as well as little notes about how to jump off the call quickly, or anything along those lines that you want to have on the side. Again, speak like you're speaking to your neighbor, to your grandmother, to your cousin, in very plain English. And remember, you are always in control of the interview. This is not something that that the journalist is in control of. You are in control. You can end it whenever, you can direct it however. You have much more control than I think people really realize.
Yeah, absolutely, Patty. And I would just say, I've worked with a lot of different faculty who, speak to reporters every single day, and also folks that maybe are more few and far between. And it's really, well, once you get one or two under your belt, you kind of get in a groove of it, and you understand sort of how best to do it, and what you should be doing. Though our team is always here at any time you need to kind of help advise and provide guidance.
Megan, do we want to save a couple minutes for any questions?
Yes, please. I think we're all set on our end.
Um, let's see if anyone's put questions in the. No, you've put some good comments on the ITV studio on the New Brunswick. Yes. So.
Does anybody have any questions? This was incredibly helpful. Thank you both so much.
And Georgette, you're going to give this presentation out to the attendees so they have it as well. We have a version that's a little bit longer that actually has examples of what to do and what not to do, little hyperlinks that are informative that you can go through on your own time.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. And we actually put this up on the Special Pops website too, so that people have an opportunity that weren't here today too, to also go through that. So it'll become a resource for quite a long time, which is wonderful. Thank you.
Do you have any comments on how one sort of cultivates relationships with the major media, where there might be one particular reporter that is covering a certain area, and you'd sort of like to get on that person's radar?
Steve, I would suggest a couple of things. I do this on my end. If I work specifically in the political field as well, with some of our experts. So if I see a story I loved, I'll write to the reporter just saying, just wanted to say, what a great article. I loved what you said about X, Y, and Z. And if you're a faculty member, you might say, I could provide expertise on this subject, just to add it in there if you ever need somebody. You don't even have to go that far. The other thing is maybe engaging on social media, if that's something that you do, whether it's following them or retweeting them, just so they can start to see your name more often.
Yeah, they used to make the emails more available. Now the emails are kind of hidden, but they want to hear from you by Twitter or something like that. So,
Nicole, is there anything that you want to add to? I know that you were here, and we probably should.
I would just, before Nicole jumps in, I would just also just say the big thing that I'm sure Nicole, Patty, and I kind of deal with is just not knowing about some of the things that are going on at this. Rutgers is a huge institution. There's so much amazing work going on, and feel free to just let us know about it, just so we can really figure out how best to kind of spread the word. A big thing for me on my end, just personally, is really trying to learn about the really great stuff in a timely manner. But sorry, Nicole, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Megan, I think that's a huge point too. If there's ever a paper that's been accepted for publication, or an award that you found out about via email, just hitting forward and sending it, just forwarding right along to us. We can figure out what to do with it. And if we have questions, we'll follow up with you. I just, the most low burden way of letting us know, because I know everyone that is so, busy. One thing I wanted to just bring up quickly is the talking points. if we've worked together on a press release, obviously some of those big talking points will come from that. But if you're just working on talking points for an interview, that's something that we can all help with as well. I've noticed a couple times, some of the talking points that I've thought of, the faculty member might not have thought of. And I think that that's the most interesting part of the entire, takeaway from the study. And maybe the faculty member didn't see it that way. So something that, we could work together with you on that and kind of fine tune those talking points. I think is one note that I was thinking about throughout this. One question I guess I had for Patti and Megan that we can discuss is if a reporter reaches out for a story that maybe is in development, they don't have a deadline. I've had a couple of those come through where we're just trying to learn more about the issue while I'm working on a longer term story. I guess the question is, how to relay that best to faculty members that, a quote that you gave in the interview might not appear in the, online in a week. Looks like it's going to be longer term, something we can stay in touch about. I wonder if you guys have advice for, the best way to manage that if it's kind of a longer term piece.
Yeah, sure, Nicole. I feel like just with everything going on with the news cycle, everything seems to be so fast paced. A lot of the times a reporter will say, I'm hoping to speak to somebody by 4 because I'd like to publish, on my story later today. It's not always the case. My former background, and actually Patti is a former magazine editor, we worked with, longer lead time. So it just really, I think, being transparent and honest, and making sure that our faculty know the timing of something. I had a reporter come to, we have our own vaccine clinics here at Rutgers. I had a reporter come, take photos, interview somebody, and the story didn't go out until about 8 days later, which, is fine because I was aware that it wasn't going to be right away. Just also what I did in that time was just to make sure none of the facts and figures had changed since the report had gone up, and nothing had, but that just might be something that you would want to look out for if it is a longer lead time.
Great.
And
So
Nicole,
are you getting as many of these things now? I mean, I've had things where, and it was a real decision about, time resources, where a major media like the Times or the Wall Street Journal would really like to get a lot of background. They'd like to get your advice on talking to other people, that you could spend months talking to them. And then in those cases it worked out. They did major stories, but you always worry because it can end up being a very big time investment.
Steve, we do get a lot, I would say maybe 1 in 10 or something like that, asking about background. We just try and have transparent conversations with the faculty. Is this worth your time?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, I typically, make the recommendation that I think it would be worthwhile. Even if you might not make the story, though hopefully we would understand, hopefully you would, you are building a relationship with that reporter, and we can talk about whether that reporter is reputable or substantial enough to really make that time commitment there.
Great.
Anybody? I'm just cautious of time. Nicole, Patti, and I are always here by email or call us, and we can sort of help bridge that gap in terms of media relations and your work and interviews and things like that. Hopefully this makes you feel better about doing opportunities like these, but we can always have one-on-one conversations and really make sure. Our biggest thing is, we're a resource for our faculty for the work that you do. Your comfortability is of most importance to us. So, keeping that in mind.
oh, and
Thank you so much. Yeah.
one other point I wanted to make just real quick, with mentioning that Nicole is kind of the first person that you would go to through the Institute, but on the back end, as we work with Nicole, we also work with the communicators at your schools. So anything that we're doing is also going to be shared with your school communicators. So any kind of platforms that they have to promote your work, they will know as well. So basically, one phone call to Nicole will start all of this process of all the rest of us talking.
So thank you all
Thank
so,
you
so much.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.